Welcome back guys, this is Campie and I will teach you how to be map 2-3 Cliff Lodge. So I'm going to be using Sky with assault rifle and drone gun again with my focus tower and my mind control tower. Enemies spawn from the left side first, so I'm just going to build my maze there. In this round there's going to be 20 pups, and a majority of the killing will be done by the mind control tower coupled with my corpse explosion and weapon damage. You should always try to upgrade a mind control tower to level 2. You don't have to do this right away, but at some point in the early future you should. And it's also a wise idea to set the focus tower to attack the enemy with the highest hit points. With the drone gun, you can just fire and forget. And when it kills one enemy, it would do corpse explosion, dealing 30% damage to all the enemies nearby. Although the secondary fire from the assault rifle is probably much better at killing groups of little enemies. Splash damage from explosive weapons and corpse explosion is pretty crazy against groups of little enemies. Now the second wave starts on the right side. So we'll just run over here and just build a maze. I'll just close the gap here. And I'll start my zigzag maze from this side and I'll bring it around to the other side. And there's a tree over there which I can incorporate into my maze. So I'm just going to build my kill area around this area, and this kill zone will be pretty close to my other kill zone on the other side of the map. The only bad thing about the drone gun is that there's a short delay, about 2.5 seconds before the drone gun's little plane starts shooting enemies once the planes actually reach the enemies. So because of that, I find the drone gun is really good if you can attack the enemies at the beginning of the maze, but once they're attacking your core, using drone gun is pretty ineffective or not very effective. Once you have a focus tower and 2 level 2 mind control towers, this strategy it seems a lot better, much more viable. The drone gun tower is typically a single target DPS weapon, but if you have corpse explosion, it sort of turns into a group killing weapon. The drone gun isn't really great against broodlings. The broodlings run really fast and they kind of run at the same speed as the planes, so planes have to kind of chase broodlings around and it has to actually touch the enemy before it starts firing. I guess the only saving grace against the broodlings using the drone gun is that the drone gun is really accurate. For players that have a hard time kind of shooting Broodlings because they move so fast, drone gun might work for them. On the west starting point, we see 2 hoverers. The drone gun is amazing killing hoverers. There's no skill needed to beat them when using the drone gun. In the past, you needed to build your maze so that you can expose the backs of the hoverers, but now that's pretty moot with the drone gun. With our setup, the west starting point is actually a lot easier than the east starting point. The west starting point has fewer enemies, and they tend to be kind of weaker too in a way. So if you're playing this co-op, you definitely need both players to focus on the east side for part of the time. But if you don't have a drone gun, the west side might be a little more tricky. It might require a little more skill, but it's typically easier. So now I'm just standing on the west hill and just shooting down on the enemies. And those mind control towers are very helpful. They'll just mind control enemies, and then enemies will kind of tank their fellow buddies and just group up. And once they're grouped up, corpse explosion is pretty crazy. It'll start a chain reaction. In the beginning, you'll have looms that will make it to your core, but they shouldn't do too much damage. Yeah, so we have a couple looms, but there's no fret because it's just this wave that we have a lot of looms attacking. And then on the other side, we have just 2 broodlings attacking our base. It's nothing much. Since the east side is more difficult, I'm just going to extend the maze as much as I can there. Here I upgrade my focus tower to level 3, although it might have been a better idea to upgrade my mind control towers to level 2 first. And you should also change the configuration of the mind control towers so that they focus on mind controlling enemies with the most health first. Now that the east side maze is pretty stretched out, I'm just going to continue extending the maze on the west side. With the drone gun, you want to start shooting as soon as possible, even if there's no enemies. The planes will find enemies once enemies kind of poke their head out in the starting points. Drone guns are so awesome against warriors and hoverers. If there's maps with very few enemies but very strong, powerful enemies, just get the drone gun if you have it. Drone guns are not really good against heavy armored units unless you have a perk that increases the damage of the drone gun, but it caps out at 135 the damage. Or you can get, if you're highest level, then you can unlock the armor piercing perk. Armor piercing perk in drone gun, you'll be able to kill any heavy armored enemy, like the heavy looms. or the heavy pups, or the super heavy boss. Next we have boggleheads. Back then, boggleheads, they kind of took a bit of skill to kill because their head kind of boggles, making it difficult to shoot. You have to kill boggleheads before they actually start hitting your core. You have to kill the boggleheads before they reach your core. Once they start attacking your core, they flail their head wildly and it's very difficult to hit their head, the weak spot. The drone gun is pretty good against boggleheads, not perfect, but since I disable weak spot hits, the drone gun is less effective. CMO with sniper rifle typically was the best against boggleheads kind of. I find juxtaposed with plasma gun, the primary fire was pretty good against boggleheads as well. And if you shoot down a line of boggleheads with the plasma gun juxtaposed, the plasma bullets still penetrate enemies and you'll just be able to kill a ton of boggleheads with just one big stream of blasting. You want to focus on killing the little enemies, but you want to put a couple of drones on the boggleheads. If you kind of ignore the boggleheads and you're at the end of your maze, then you pretty much screwed yourself. So we got some looms over there on the west side near the end of the maze, so I'm just going to shoot some drones just to take care of them or weaken them. So yeah, I'm just going to focus my attentions on the west side. But typically the east side, the core, you need to focus mostly on that because in the later stages the east side will take a big beating on the core. If the west side gets damaged in the beginning, it's not as bad, but the east side, if the core gets damaged, it's way worse. If you got decent aim, you can zoom in by pressing and holding control and just shoot the bogglehead manually. It might be a good idea to upgrade the mind control tower to level 2 before upgrading the focus to level 3. Those extra seconds that enemies are mind controlled for makes a huge deal. Here I just extend my maze because later on we'll have rhinos running and we want to make it kind of zigzaggy because rhinos really hate zigzags. They move really slowly around corners, but they excel at straightaways. Drone guns are great against air, and if you're using sky, drone guns can kill heavies pretty decently as well. If you want to kill them even faster, you can get the perk that penetrates armor, but you don't really need it. You might benefit more by getting a perk that is beneficial at killing enemies in general. Very few enemies have armor, so having armor penetration may not be a great idea. But if you have the DLC, the last DLC, there's a ton of armored units. So if you want to beat the last DLC, you gotta get the armor penetration. Sky with drone gun is very good against Soaker as well, although Autumn with drone gun's even better. But typically drone gun is better in the hands of Sky, since each time Sky hits an enemy with a shot, the next shot will deal additional damage. If the drone gun didn't cap at 135 damage, theoretically the shots could do And I'm just taking a wild guess. If you're fighting a boss, maybe upwards of tens of thousands. But it seems like Coffee Stain, they don't want it to be that powerful, so they had to cap it at 135. The only exclusion for this is for Soakers. Soakers, it doesn't cap at 135, it just keeps going up and up and higher. And thankfully, Sky with Drone Gun, you no longer have to chase the heavy looms and shoot them in the butt with a sniper rifle, because in the past, that's pretty much what I had to do. A level 3 focus tower is also pretty good against heavies as well. Sometimes it's a good idea to build a focus tower at the end of the maze. Then any enemies that make it to the core will get attacked by the focus tower. So this way, when the enemy is at the core, you don't have to run from the kill zone to the core to protect the core. The more time you spend at the kill zone, the more effective your maze is. Because once you're at the core and not the kill zone, then you lose efficiency at killing enemies. This is especially true if you have slow towers or towers that kind of help you kill enemies with your weapons, such as I do with my mind control towers. Try to put drones on the bobbleheads as soon as you can, if possible. Focus towers don't do any damage to bobbleheads at all. I think bobbleheads are the only enemies that focus towers don't do any damage to at all. In a lot of waves, enemies will come out of the west spawn point first. But at the same time, the wave ends a lot sooner than the east side. So I'll probably just kill off most of the enemies on the west side, then I'll run over to the east side later on. The east side has a lot of flying units, Spitfires. Just use your drone gun and shoot them down. And be careful you don't get blown up by those little enemies that blow up. This wave is actually one of the most toughest waves, so if you have a little trouble with this wave, then it's not too bad. Just as long as they don't do too much damage to your core. So this last wave has a Patriarch. If you have trouble killing the Patriarch, then building a mine tower at the beginning of maybe wave 2 or 1 might have been a good idea, so that I can stockpile the mines and just save them for the boss. I built a lot of blocks over there because that's where the boss comes out, and typically he destroys all the blocks that are close to him first before going to the main part of your maze, or the core. And if you put the mines directly on top of the blocks closest to where he spawns, he'll hit the blocks, step on the mines and blow up. And I just pre-shoot the drones to kill enemies that will come out. So the boss should be coming out any moment now. So I just stand over here and shoot my drones in his general direction. This time around, something funny kind of happens, which is very unbeneficial to me. So the Patriarch comes by and he hits one of the blocks, but for some reason he runs around the other blocks, which is very unusual. Then he starts hitting my main maze, making a shortcut, which pretty much screws me a bit. At least I have a focus tower that helps me kill it. If you have 2 players or more, then the Patriarch might be really powerful. So in that case, you might have to build a mine tower. Right now, the west core is under attack, but you don't have that much to worry about because the east side is probably harder to defend against. The west side is not. There's no more enemies spawning out. But in general, it looks like I won, so there's no need to panic. I hope you guys found this video informative, and if you did, please subscribe and share my video. And I will see you in the next clip.